again, good morning, good afternoon, depends on where you're in the world. To everyone, thank you for joining today's session. And we are here to explore how leveraging dark web intelligence can help us combat supply chain threats more effectively. And let's dive right into it. So there are a couple of statistics I want to share with you. Uh, let's start by looking at some key statistics that highlight the current state of supply chain attacks. As you can see on the screen, these attacks are not only increasing, but evolving in complexity as well. So based on the statistics from ENISA, 66% of supply chain attacks target the supplier's code, which is introducing the vulnerabilities right at the source. And 62% of the exploits the trust customers have in their suppliers, showing how critical it is to maintain rigorous standards across all partnership. And another statistics is 62% of the attacks rely on malware, an ever-present and dangerous tool for attackers. And 68% of the attacks aim to access sensitive data, which remains a primary target for cybercriminals. As you know, most of the time they use these attacks probably also for ransomware attacks as well. So when we go deeper to understand the landscape of the supply chain attacks, we can also see that supply chain attacks are rising dramatically, with 28% increase the malicious packages uploaded open source repositories in 2023 compared to 2022. And 64% of the companies report being impacted by these attacks are direct results of increased reliance on open source software. So even though these threats are increasing, the global supply chain industry is still expected to grow as well. So with a compound annual growth rate of 11% from 2022 to 2027, despite the ongoing challenges and disruptions. So in the future, we are expecting more supply chain attacks just because of third parties. The dependency on third parties also increase each year. So looking at all the types of threats, like almost 56% of the businesses identified cybersecurity as a top concern for supply chain resilience. So the most common risks include data leaks, data breaches, and malware attacks, all of which can have crippling effect on business operations. And it is not just cyber threats. For example, there are also other reasons they can be affect the business as a supply chain. For example, extreme weather events have also been flagged with the Everstream Analytics, given the 100% risk score for 2024, indicating certainty of disruptions. I'm sure you guys all remember the CrowdStrike incident. Just because of the CrowdStrike, Microsoft affected, and all the systems they use CrowdStrike and Microsoft were not able to operate during that time, even if that was not a cyber threat attack. In case your supply chain is interrupted by these disruptions, that means it is most probably you're going to be also disrupted. So this shows that the business need to be prepared for both digital and physical threats to their supply chains. That is why most of the regulations, international regulations and standards in cybersecurity also mandate like there has to be someone in the company with the title business continuity manager. So business continuity manager has to make sure, like, if the company is affected by the supply chain attacks or any other reason, the daily operations still continue. So looking to the future, we can predict that like by 2024, end of the 2024, like 50% of the companies will adopt balanced multi-shoring sourcing strategies, leading to 10% point increase in supply reliability. So for Asian-based supply chain organizations, 40% are expected to recover margin by focusing on multi-shoring supply sourcing to enhance reliance and reliability. So this us brings to the one conclusion, actually. So traditionally, we often say that the people are the weakest link in security, but as this statistics shows us, like the third party and suppliers are now one of the most vulnerable points in the supply chain. So whether it's a true compromised code or exploited trust or malicious malware, attackers are increasingly targeting the weakest link, third parties that are integral to our operations, but are often less secure. So it is clear that the vulnerabilities in our supply chain are not just technical, they involve relationship with external partners who may not have the same level of protection in place. And as we proceed, I'll demonstrate how the dark web intelligence can help us identify and mitigate these risks before they can cause significant damage. So I just want to make sure when it comes to classified threats, the third-party threats are considered as insider threat. So the third parties are, in many cases, they can compromise your security by misusing access or access entrusted to them. So since we are going to focus third-party attacks today, I just want to make sure this third-party attacks mostly considered again as a insider threats, just because this classification is important most of the time. Even in the security people, they think like most of the threats come from externally. No, most of the threats usually comes internally. When we take a look at the statistics, we can see that like insider threats that could be a people, like malicious purpose or something not malicious, but careless employees or they doesn't pay attention to anything. So it is those threats, internal threats, are much more critical and much more higher than the external threats. Most of the time, just because of the departments, security departments focus on the external threats and they forget about the internal threats. And that's why supply chain attacks also became in very critical and very high level. That's why I would just want to make sure the threats are classified, internal threats, and internal threats still one of the challenges most of the security departments has to face. If you guys remember with my previous webinars, I mentioned a couple of times in some of the trainings or the webinars, the game between the offensive part and the defensive part is not fair. Just because the offensive part, it is not with the working hours, there is no like monthly salary, they can earn a lot of money, right? Even if we cannot see in our dreams. So in very young age, actually, if you remember one of the admin operators of the Lapsus, like he was the head of the Lapsus, the guy was 19 years old guy. And so far he made millions of dollars just because of Lapsus's operation. So just because of this unfair game, the offensive part still using by their leveraging. What I mean by that, like they publish posts on the dark web. They offer people like if you give us one initial access in your organization, then we are gonna give you like $100,000. That's a lots of money, right? So for the people who working for by their working hours and they have very low salary when you compare the earnings by the threat actors, this is something like they can easily give initial access, right? That's why it's important. This is also valid not just the employees in your organization, but it is also valid for the third parties because this call is not just for the people, for insider employees. This is a call for the third parties as well. If they can provide any initial access to hack that organization, they're willing to share their profit with that third party as well. That's why internal threats are very critical and very important, and supply chain attacks are part of the internal threats. So now we can talk about some of the most common dark web threats that directly affect supply chain security. So the dark web serves as a marketplace for various cyber threats that can severely disrupt supply chains. So this threats includes, for example, data breaches, and sensitive customer information and proprietary business data are frequently traded on the dark web. Once exposed, organization can face severe reputational damage and regulatory security. And there's also stolen credentials. For example, cyber criminals often sell stolen login credentials occurred through the phishing attacks, malware infections, or previous data breaches. So these credentials can provide unauthorized access to critical systems, giving attackers foothold within the supply chain. And of course, with the new threat landscape, as you know, phishing as a service, ransomware as a service, malware as a service, ideology and concept became very popular and very important among the threat actors just because it makes too easy for anyone to use this platform and initiate the attack, right? And that's why ransomware as a service, like you don't even have to know coding, you don't have to know technical to how to use technical tools, you don't have to know anything about red teaming or pen testing. By using the platforms provided by the threat actors as a ransomware service, you can easily hack any organization and you don't have to worry about how to do encryption, how to provide the decryption key, how to do the financial transactions, which is most usually altcoins or the Bitcoin. So all this, everything is ready for you. You just have to need initial access to hack that organization. That's why the dark web is a hub for ransomware variants and ransomware as a service offerings, enabling cyber criminals easily launch ransomware attacks. And these attacks can halt operations and cause significant financial damages to supply chains. And the one other thing we can mention, malware and exploits, exploit keys and malicious kits and malicious software are readily available and making it easier for attackers to infiltrate supply chain partners, disrupt their operations, and exfiltrate sensitive data. Again, just like the ransomware as a service, the threat actors also provide exploit as a service, malware as a service, phishing as a service. And when it comes to the fragile activities, dark web forums also facilitate various fragile activities such as identity theft, financial fraud, or counterfeit transactions, all of which undermine trust within the supply chain ecosystem. So these threats, while diverse, all share a common risk. They can significantly weaken the integrity of your supply chain if left unchecked. In the next session, we can take a deeper look, like how those things can affect your organization as well. So there are a couple of notable supply chain attacks in the past. Those are very critical and important to review, just because by reviewing these supply chain attacks, we can actually get some lessons learned, something very useful and insightful. I have 4 supply chain attacks to go through. Each one of them is unique and very important, and I'm going to share the lessons learned for this supply chain attacks. So one of them is one of the most notable supply chain attack is Operation Shadow Hammer, which is an extremely sophisticated attack carried out against the ASUS live update utility. So this attack was first uncovered by the Kaspersky in early 2019. It's an example of how cyber criminals can exploit a trusted software vendor to distribute malware to its customers. So let me explain in the attacks in more detail. So as you can see on the figure on your screen, the Operation Shadow Hammer specifically target ASUS's live update utility, which is a pre-installed software on ASUS laptops used to deliver firmware and software updates to customers. So the attackers compromised ASUS's update server, injecting a backdoor into the software update that was then cryptographically signed using ASUS legitimate digital certificates. So this even made it appear as if the malware was trusted and legitimate update. Like there was no chance to realize at that moment this is actually malicious behavior. So the malware embedded within the ASUS Live Update utility was a VPN Protect shielded backdoor, which is highly obfuscated and designed to evade detection. So this backdoor enabled attackers to selectively target certain users by checking the MAC addresses of infected machines. If MAC address didn't match the one of the attacker's hard-coded target list, the malware would remain dormant. This list contains over 600 MAC addresses pointing to highly targeted operations aimed to specific victims. And we can see that in this, when we take a look at their stages of the attack, after the compromised update was installed, the malware followed a multi-stage processes. So in stage one, the malware is initially masked with the update bypassing the antivirus software through its VM protected shield code. In stage two, after installation, the malware would compare the MAC address of the infected machines against the hard-coded list. Again, if it is a match was found, the malware proceed to decrypt the next stage using the serial number of the volume C as part of the decryption process. And for stage 3 and stage 4, the core malware payload was activated through this core thread and core loader. And once fully activated, the malware would load the core plugin, which could interact with the various connectors, including file loader, registry loader, or TCP, HTTP, HTTPS, UDP connectors. So these components allow attackers to communicate with the infected system and exploit the data and potentially install the additional malware as well. So what made Operation Shadow Hammer specifically dangerous was the highly selective nature. So although the malware affected over 1 million access users, it was only activated on the 500 systems based on the MAC address filtering. So this suggests that the attackers had a predefined list with a high value targets they were seeking to compromise, possibly within the corporate or government networks. And this was discovered again by the Kaspersky in January 2019, and they were able to connect this activity back to the compromised ASUS updates. And with the further analysis, revealed that ASUS was unaware of the compromise for several months, during which time malicious updates were distributed a large portion of their customers. So Kaspersky researchers referred to this incident as a silent attack because it leveraged a trusted software update mechanism to infiltrate systems without alerting the victims. So that is why this is one of the good examples. It is very important to constantly monitor the dark web, just because of if the Kaspersky couldn't find out this attack, most probably us were able to not notify it, and this maybe keep continue until they get more and more information. And again, when they find a way to hack your organization through your supply chain or third parties, of course, most of them, if they're not ransomware operators, if they're APTs, they're going to stay silent and they can collect as much as information they can, even installing more malwares to your systems and get even more credential and critical information. So that's one of the differences between the APT groups and the ransomware operators. For the APT groups, when they are in your network, when they are in your system, their main purpose is to stay there as much as possible. We know that this with the SolarWinds case as well, which I'm going to mention in a couple of minutes. But for ransomware operators, when they have your data, the first thing they want to do, their main purpose is turn this data to the money. So instead of staying silent in the systems, what they're going to do, they're going to contact you and they're going to let you know they have your data. If you don't pay them, they're going to make this data public. So in this case, we saw that like most of the time, supply chain attacks used by the APTs. Of course, it also used by the ransomware operators as well, which I'm going to also mention as another use case. But once they are in your system, APT groups, they're going to stay in there forever if they're not being discovered. So that's why it is important to monitor your third parties as well, to make sure because of them you're not hacked. Even if you have the best security in the world, if your supply chains are weak, that means you're most probably going to be a target of the threat actors. So As a lesson learned, this attacks highlights the importance of securing the entire supply chain, especially when dealing with the software updates that are distributed to thousands of millions of users. And I just remember one of the, like, since I'm the CISO at SOCRadar, I also do um, some social engineering tests in SOCRadar just to make sure like we cover everything. So one of my scenario I created, uh, this is how actual threat actors get very creative. It is also important to monitor threat actors because they're so creative, right? Again, there's an unfair game between threat actors and the defensive security people, and just because of their so motivated threat actors, they always being much creative than the defensive part. So what I did, one of the social engineering, is just because when I talking about the updates of the ASUS and how it became the supply chain attacks. So it with the scenario, what I did is like I sent a purposely understandable phishing email to all employees in SOCRadar, and anyone, even if they don't have the security background, easily can understand this is a phishing attack, right? So what I did, my main purpose of they let them understand this is a phishing attack, like they can discover themselves easily, so they can be happier, right? They can be, oh, I find out this is a phishing attack. So what I did, the I put the, as you know, you can report this to the Google as a phishing, right, or spam. So I replace their button. Actually, I put another button with the red and put their like report to the Google as a spam. So most of the people, they realize this is a phishing attack, but they click that link to the Google, and when they click it, the interface comes like you have to log into your Google account, and you need to put your username and the password. And most of the people unfortunately follow that. And I know they're much more aware right now, but at the moment that was a good idea. So updates are, or the reporting parts, like it's part of the security procedure, also can be compromised. So that's why it is important to also check them as well. So this is why what dark web intelligence and continuous monitoring are critical for organizations to detect any compromise in their supply chain before it causes widespread damage. So the other things, of course, the solar wind attacks is a game changer. Most of the time when we do webinars or the trainings, I keep mentioning about the solar winds because it is a milestone when it comes to cybersecurity attacks. So this incident serves as a milestone again in the evolution of supply chain, thanks to its complexity, scale, and the high-profile target involved. As you remember, for example, like Department of Defense, it is what we expect is one of the best protected organization or government branch in the world, right? Especially in the United States, and probably they are. But because of the SolarWinds case, even the Department of Defense, United States Department of Defense, were able to hacked by the Russian APTs. So not just the Department of Defense, almost all the departments, federal departments in the United States, Department of State, Department of Education, Department of Trade, they're all being had just because they all use the SolarWinds as a third party. And Russian APT groups, they were able to actually stay, if I'm not wrong, more than 1.5 years in their system. So when we go through this particularly important incident, we can see that the attackers managed to insert malicious code to the legitimate update of the Orion software, which was distributed to the SolarWinds customer. And over 18,000 organizations unknowingly installed the compromised update, including again Department of Homeland Security, Department of Treasury, and not just the federal department, government branches, also big companies such as Microsoft, Cisco. They were also part of the supply chain attacks since they also used SolarWinds. So the attackers infiltrated SolarWinds software development process and planted malware in the DLL component of the Orient software. So this compromised DLL was signed and delivered as a part of the official SolarWinds update, effectively turning trusted software into a delivered mechanism for malicious code. So once the compromise update was installed, the backdoor embedded in the SolarWinds.Orient.Core business layer DLL was executed, and the malicious code called specific functions that contain backdoor capabilities. To avoid detection, the backdoor actually conducted a series of checks to make sure it was running in a genuine and compromised environment and in a sandbox or tested environment. And with the reconnaissance, once they have insight of the target network, the malware would gather system information, sending the data back to the attackers. And of course, they use command and control server. The backdoor then connected to the command and control server using a domain that was partly generated based on system information, making each subdomain unique. So the attackers could issue further commands and instructs the malware perform the additional tasks. So the backdoor could even receive an additional C2 addresses for further communication. Uh, there's also exfiltration. The backdoor began exfiltrating the gathered system information and send it back to the attackers. And in some cases, the attackers escalate the operation, manual intervention, performing taskless credential theft, privilege escalation, and lateral movement within the victim's network. We know that SolarWinds attacks had a fear-reaching impact, affecting high-profile targets across both private and public sectors, including U.S. federal agencies, major corporations, and this attack not only exposed sensitive government information, but also highlighted the vulnerability of supply chain attacks. So in response, United States government issued executive order 14028 to improve cybersecurity, particularly for federal networks, placing a strong emphasis on enhancing supply chain security. And the breach brought attention to the importance of zero trust architecture and enhanced detection capabilities across the software supply chain. And when it comes to the who it is actually, we know that it is a Russian state-sponsored group, APT-29, also known as a Kazi Bear. This ability to stay hidden for sensitive, they were able to stay hidden for several months while collecting sensitive information, demonstrate their advanced capabilities. So the key lesson learned from the SolarWinds case, it is you have to trust, but you need to verify. So the SolarWinds attacks underscores the need to synchronize software updates, even from trusted vendors before they are deployed. And importance of visibility, organizations must ensure they have visibility into every layer of their software supply chain, from development to deployment. And of course, using dark web intelligence to monitor discussion tools or data that could indicate an impending attack can provide early warnings of such sophisticated campaigns. So the SolarWinds attacks is a stark reminder that even the well-established companies and government agencies are vulnerable to supply chain attacks. As the complexity of the attacks increases, so must our ability to detect and respond and mitigate the data effectively. So one other case I want to mention is Kaseya VSA ransomware attack. Since, as I mentioned, most of the time, supply chain attacks are as a weakness discovered by the APTs, but of course, then ransomware operators also get involved. They realize also, yes, supply chain attacks is a good point to initiate their attacks, since most of the people in the defensive part doesn't think supply chain could be such threat. And this is what happened with the Kaseya ransomware attack as well. So this attack targeted Kaseya, which is a company, IT management solutions for managed service provider, MSPs, which in turn manage IT for multiple other business. So in July 2021, the Reveal ransomware group, also known as Sodinobiki, carried out sophisticated ransomware attack by exploiting vulnerabilities in Kaseya VSA software platform. And Kaseya is a tool used by MSPs to monitor and manage the IT infrastructure of their clients. So by compromising Kaseya software, the attackers were able to inject ransomware into the systems hundreds of MSPs. And can you imagine MSPs also provide hundreds or thousands of customers as well. So this is like an inception, right? You're hacking the MSPs, and which is also valid for the Snowflake as well, which I'm going to mention. So when you hack the Snowflake, that's why it is a good target for threat actors. You are not just hacking the Snowflake, but also hacking the, the other companies which Snowflake provide services. And if some of them is MSPs, which is even better because you can even hack more companies using the MSPs. So which turn affected the thousands of businesses, of course, affected by Kaseya. And the attackers exploited vulnerabilities in Kaseya VSA SaaS platform. Specifically, they targeted vulnerability CV 2021 30116 that allowed them to bypass authentication mechanism, access administrative privileges, and deploy malicious script to MSP clients. So the attack exploited the Kaseya VSA vulnerability to take control of the system. Using the MSP infrastructure, the attackers distributed the Reveal ransomware to their clients' endpoints, and the ransomware encrypted the data on those systems, leaving businesses across various industries unable to access their critical files. So the attackers demanded ransom payments, threatening to leak stolen data or keep the business's system locked if they didn't comply. So Reveal asked for $70 million in cryptocurrency. So it's a huge amount of money, right, to provide the universal decryption key, making this one of the largest ransomware demands in the history. So the attack affected more than 1,500 businesses globally, including financial services, travel agencies, public sector organizations, and small and medium enterprises. So many of the MSP customers were able to operate due to ransomware, and some even had to shut down operations temporarily. So this attack demonstrates the risk associated with the using third-party vendors, especially those with the access to critical IT infrastructure. So even if I'm not wrong, the FBI and the CISA were involved at the investigation, and a universal decryption key was eventually recovered, allowing victims to decrypt their data without paying the ransom. However, the aftermath of the attack was widespread and highlight the cascading effects as a supply chain attack can have. So lesson learned from this Kisei attack is the securing your SaaS platform. So this attack revealed the importance of patching vulnerabilities in SaaS platforms and ensuring that the security measures are robust across the board. And third party risk, the Kisei attack emphasized the potential risk posed by the third party providers like MSPs. And when such providers are compromised, their customers become collateral damage, leading device disruption. Sorry. So one of the things, monitoring for vulnerabilities, and especially on the dark web, and identify potential exploits before they are weaponized, can prevent incident like this from happening. So this attacks, much like SolarWinds and Operation Shadow Hammer, demonstrate the growing scale of complexity of supply chain attacks, and dark web intelligence and continuous monitoring are the key. Identify and trust the early, ensuring your organization is prepared for any potential risks. I'm just gonna go through quickly on this slide. Just I wanted to compare one of the biggest supply chain attacks in the history. And when we take a look, I already mentioned about the Kaseya and the SolarWinds. There was one attack with the Microsoft Exchange. They exploited the 0-day, and the Hafnium Group and along others exploited vulnerabilities in Microsoft Exchange server by attacking them over the internet. Unlike SolarWinds, this was not a supply chain, but a vulnerability-based attack that targeted on-prem Microsoft Exchange ISS server. But when we compare similarities and differences, all these three attacks exploited either trusted software updates or vulnerabilities in widely used platforms gain access to the high-value targets. So SolarWinds and Kaseya were both supply chain attacks. Through SolarWinds involved state-sponsored espionage, while Kaseya was conducted by the cybercriminals with ransomware as primary goal. So the time frame of the attacks varied significantly, with SolarWinds operating stealth over a long period, while KCS ransomware attack was swift and aggressive, making it difficult for effective organization to respond before significant damage was done. So the differences between the KCS and SolarWinds, again, just because for the SolarWinds, the threat actors was APT groups, and for the Kaseya, threat actors was the ransomware operators. And I already explained between the APT groups and the ransomware operators how they behave differently. So this is one of the most updated, maybe supply chain attack. It happened in 2024, and which is another critical example of supply chain attack that affect multiple high-profile companies and resulted in significant data loss. So this attack was orchestrated by the Shiny Hunters hacker group, knowing for their previous breaches and involved exploiting weaknesses in a contractor system. So it started with the spread phishing email sent by the Shiny Hunters targeting a contractor within the supply chain. So the phishing email contained an info stealer malware. A couple of weeks ago, we did a webinar about the info stealer malware. Most of the time, we are still not aware how info stealer malware could be dangerous. So this is also one of the good examples how info stealer malware can affect your employees, your customers, also your third parties. So in this case, info stealer malware infected the contractor systems and allowed attackers to install remote access Trojan. So through this access, the attackers were able to gather plain text credentials stored on the internal systems, specifically on Jira, so which is often used for project management and storing critical data. This credential include usernames, password for various accounts, including those of the Snowflake and some high-profile clients like Ticketmaster. And the attackers discovered that many of the credentials were stored in plain text without any encryption, then they were easily can log into this accounts since they have the plain text credentials. So moreover, the Snowflake accounts did not have the multi-factor authentication enabled. That's why we always keep saying, please activate your multi-factor authentication. It is important. Of course, multi-factor authentication also can be bypassed, but still you're putting like defense in depth approach. You're putting one door behind another to make your defense stronger, right? That's why encryption and multi-factor authentication plays a critical role. And in this case, unfortunately, the data was in plain text and multi-factor authentication was not able, which makes much more easier for attackers to access the system using the stolen credentials. And when inside Snowflake's infrastructure, the attackers were able to exfiltrate massive amount of sensitive customer data. So the breach impacted a wide range of companies with millions of records exposed from several notable organizations. For example, 560 million records from Ticketmaster, 30 million records from Santander, 380 million records from Advanced Auto Parts, 190 million records from Landing Tree, 100 million records from Quote's Wizard. This is the information we know, but the damage most probably much more higher than this. Actually, I did another webinar about the Snowflake last month, I guess. So I was able to talk to threat actors for the Snowflake, And based on their statement, they said more than 400 companies data they have, and they were trying to sell this information to Snowflake, and Snowflake refused to purchase this data, and they were trying to sell this information, this data actually, not information, to the Snowflake for $100,000, and Snowflake refused it. They were even able to provide me this data for $1,000. So this showed actually how desperate are they, or were they at the moment, to sell this data, because the main purpose of the threat actors are to sell this data, turn data to the money. And since they couldn't sell it at the price they wanted, that means like this much of data can be sold part by part, and this can easily cause phishing attacks in near future. And when phishing attacks increase, usually ransomware attacks follows. So what I expect in the future, 3 or 6 months, the phishing attacks are going to dramatically increase, and the ransomware attacks is going to follow it. So the lesson learned from the Snowflake attack is the supply chain risk management, SCRM, plays important role. So this attack demonstrates the importance of third-party risk management, TPRM, in evaluating and continuously monitoring the security practices of suppliers, contractors, and their third parties. And implementing basic security can be a game changer. So organizations, we keep saying that, must enforce basic security controls like MFA and encryption for all sensitive data, especially when dealing with the third-party systems and internal platforms like Jira that may store critical information. And then again, dark web intelligence monitoring for stolen credentials on conversations about the vulnerabilities on the dark web could have provided early warning signs, allowing companies to take preventive measures before the breach escalated. So the Snowflake breach is another reminder that supply chain security cannot be ignored, and even the smallest vulnerability can lead to the widespread damage if exploited. So that's why I want to show you our supply chain intelligence in our platform. If you want to have an access to our platform, those are the QR codes. You can scan and go there. While you're doing that, maybe I can go ahead and open the platform and show it to you.
Yeah, and actually, in the meantime, Ansar, we prepared a survey for our
Okay.
attendees, so they can. I think they are seeing it right now in this on the screen. They will be
Yes.
able to see the questions that we prepared and to fill it in as well. We can give them a couple of minutes until you can go ahead and open the platform. Then
Great. Thank you, Shaima.
you're welcome. And as I mentioned it actually during the chat, everyone feel free to submit any questions. We will be assisting you with it later on by the end of the sessions, which it will be within a couple of minutes. Feel free to submit any questions that you have that we can help you with. Thank you, everyone.
So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you 2 minutes to finish up the survey. And again, if you want to
Sure.
access to the platform, you can scan the codes on your screen. Jeffrey has a question: how often should vendors be audited? That's a very good question. Jeffrey, it depends on what kind of critical data your vendors keeps. If it is high critical, like maybe every month, that is a good idea. But first you need to classify the data, like what kind of your third party, what kind of data they keep it, they have an access or. So that gives you an idea how often you need to audit your third party is. And if there's any development, if you need technique, of course, you need the audit start over, just because that means maybe they were not vulnerable, they had good security, but with the new developments, there's a possibility they're also being exploited with this attack. That's why it is not just important to monitor the third parties, but it's also important to monitor the threat landscape as well and the threat actors. That's why it's very critical. That was a good question, though. For example, if, since I'm the CISO at SOCRadar, what happens even if we have the certifications report like ISO 27001 certification or SOC 2 type 1, type 2 reports or sys controls, for example, and we do the like pen testing 3 times in a year. Social engineering, for example, we did it 6 times last year. So security is very critical and very important for us. But even if we provide all this information to our partners and customers, still they send us questionnaires, right? They're asking more details, more information about the security. So this, even if this reports, for example, for SOC 2, type 2, they monitor your systems during the 6 months. So this is not something you can easily pass, right? Because they have to make sure the all security implementations by SOC 2 are done by the security team and they're working flawlessly. But still, those reports and certifications not good enough, and it shouldn't be, of course. That's why they send us questionnaires asking lots of questions about the details of the security that we can share, and they just want to make sure their supply, their third parties are safe and secure. Jeffrey, another question. If vulnerability was identified in a vendor solution and reported, the vendor doesn't pitch it, could they be held liable for negligence? Of course they can. So for example, in the European Union, there's GDPR, right? I'm sure you're familiar with the GDPR. And if your personal data is leaked because of the third party or the company you're doing business with it, they have to respond to authorities in European Union, and the first thing before they give a penalty or proceeding, they're gonna ask you a couple of questions, like if you follow the certain procedures, if you take the necessary actions. For example, in this case, Snowflake case, the data is not encrypted and not multi-factor authentication is not able. We're not able. That's a huge negligence. Right? Of course, they're gonna hold accountable for this one, and the penalty is going to increase dramatically just because of they didn't follow this certain procedures. So let me stop my share and go to the platform.
Sorry to interrupt you, Insar, but we do have one more question actually from Alex.
Sure.
If we could get that one.
For SOCRadar customers with only SCT license, it would be great if we could have alerts management for supply chain related alerts. Dark web. Great. This is actually not a question, but it is a comment. Sure, Alex, I'm taking my notes and I'm gonna let the people know about your comment, like what we can do about this. So let me share my screen again. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we do.
Okay, great. So this is when you have an access to the SOCRadar, this is the interface you're going to see it. As you can see on the left side, we have 3 modules: attack surface management, digital risk protection, cyber threat intelligence, and recently we had to add supply chain intelligence, just because supply chain intelligence plays very important and critical role recently. As I mentioned, it is the weakest link in security right now. most of the damage is done by the supply chains. That's why we had to work on this, and we had to develop new module so the people can monitor the organization, companies, they can monitor their third parties. So the attack surface management, basically what we do with the SOCRadar is like we try to find as much as information publicly available about your organization, just like the threat actors do. So threat actors, they have no idea, or red teamers. I used to be head of the red team. So red teaming is very different than the pen testing. What we do with the red teaming is like, we don't have any prior knowledge about that company. Like we don't know the, like where to attack. There's no scope, like there's no permissions on the firewall or any, if they use IPS IDs, we don't have anything with permissions. We have to bypass everything by ourselves. It's like black box. So threat actors work because threat actors works with the same way. They have no idea, as long as they have insiders in your organization and they get information about your organization from someone who works for you. Otherwise, what they can do is just can go to the public, the available sources, and collect as much as information. Like they are trying to find your digital footprints, and after they find it, they're going to find the weakest link in this digital footprints, and they're going to develop their strategy based on the weakest link. So what we do with the attack surface management, with your main domain, we collect all the details about your organization, like domain names, IP addresses, websites, SSL certifications, login pages, IP blocks, mobile application. The third-party technology is used. This is particularly important because if there's any vulnerability, this is also some sort of third-party attacks. If there's a vulnerability, for example, if one of your website is using the Vue.js, if there's a vulnerability with this specific technology, we're going to let you know, like you're using this technology, but there's a vulnerability, you need to patch it immediately, otherwise it can be exploited by the hackers. So digital risk protection is basically dark web monitoring as well, but this information directly related to your organization. If we can monitor the keywords you provided or VIP accounts, or again, if you working with the third-party employees, then we can also monitor them. Like if their data is leaked in the dark web, we can let you know, like you are working with this third party and one of their employees' data is publicly available on dark web. So you can make sure actually this employee doesn't have access to your critical data. And there's also cyber threat intelligence. Of course, this is the general intelligence, not directly related to your organization, but you need to know anyway. For example, if one of the threat actors, they impersonate the Amazon.com, that means you need to know this just because most probably one of your employees or customers or your third parties are going to click that impersonated link, which is going to take them to the malicious website and download maybe info stealer. And that's why you have to prevent the network traffic from your organization to this malicious website. And that's why you need to know this data. This is like the Google of the SOCRadar. You can come even check your third party as well. What happened? Oops. Where was I? Threat intelligence. They downgraded me. Can you believe this? during the demo. No, sir. So this is the demo account we are using. What I'm gonna do is just let me sign out from here. I'm gonna sign into my own account. Sorry about the. Do you have really? I don't want to take that chance. I'm not sure if you have it. To be. Okay, coming right up. Recapture. Oh, I didn't put any recapture. Okay, never mind. Go here. Okay, two-factor authentication. We do use two-factor authentication, thanks God.
Okay, I think Insar, until you open up the platform, I was thinking maybe our attendees they can inform us from where they are joining us in the meantime, so we can have an idea. Most of our attendees from which country or region? Feel free to submit it through the chat, guys. Also for the actually recording, we will be uploading them through all the webinars that we are doing. We will be uploading them through the SOCRadar channel account. Feel free to check it for the previous webinars. And here we are, we have it. Good.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's totally fine, it happens.
Yeah, Purya, he's right. Demo gods are messing with me. So what I wanted to show you sir, about the inconvenience, just because of the demo account I was using. This is my account with all the privileges I have. So we have supply chain intelligence on the left side, as you can see. So with this one, actually, you can see the trends. For example, in September 19th, the attacks are increased. That like this could be interesting just because you need to know exactly what happened in these days, and one of your supply chain provider is affected by this or not. You can search by the companies or the attack type or the countries, even the countries you can check it. And by using this one, you can actually broader your search For example, this is maybe, let me go this is July 3rd. So there are 133 cyber attacks and 51 ransomware attacks. Like, this could be very interesting just because this is one of the peaks we can see. And I can see also in May, if I brother this, there's another one, 131 cyber attacks and 14 ransomware. Like, those peaks could be something very useful for your concern. So we have also, depends on the your third parties, we also create, like, illustrate the environment based on the third party providers to your company, and you can easily actually check if you're with the KPMG or using Adobe, whatever your third party you're using, and by easily clicking that third party, you can get like lots of useful information on the right side. The popularity level, for example, 100, this is one of the most popular third party, of course, and exploitable level 21.89, it is very high. So there's a possibility with the Adobe, based on the, as you can see, news from the dark web, since we are constantly monitoring the dark web. We have a dedicated dark web team in SOCRadar, and they keep continuing to monitor the dark web 7 days, 24 hours, 365 days. So all necessary information can be found here. And of course, this is not limited to it, this one. You can actually add more third parties, or we can provide you the global ones. For example, we have third-party companies, the most popular ones listed in here, and based on the popularity score, of course, like the popularity score means they use by the majority of the companies in the world. So as you know, KPMG is one of them, Microsoft is one of them, Adobe, Oracle, IBM. So the exposure level, for example, when I take a look, the exposure level, if I use Adobe, that means based on the newest information from the dark web, there's a high possibility Adobe could be exploited in near future. When I click on it, actually I can find the details. Those are the news. Even if you don't have to go to the dark web, you can find all related dark web news on here. And also, if you need any reports, as you can see, for example, almost each month, the SOCRadar created report about Adobe. So it depends on the also new vulnerabilities and the new developments on the dark web, the new report is going to be created. And when we take a look, we can see that when this created and the configurations, if it is your tier 1, that means it's one of the most critical supply chain third-party provider for you, or this could be like tier 2, tier 3, it depends. So you can configure it, and if it is the most critical one, that means tier 1, that means, of course, you have to be much more careful. Or if it is not one of your third party, you can easily remove it. So this actually gives you with the real, you can also use the real-time tracking. That means if there's any development with this third party, you are going to be easily informed that they're going to let you know you're using Adobe and there's a high critical vulnerability on Adobe, and you need to be careful. You need to do the patching, you need the updating, you need to take the countermeasures. You have to make sure what kind of critical data Adobe has it in your organization. So actually this supply chain attack intelligence, not attack, gives you better understanding and broader picture about your third parties, which makes your job much more easier when it's come to the monitor your third parties. So this is the quick demo I wanted to show you. It's like much more easier. Of course, you try to do it yourself. Like you can go to the dark web and monitor the third-party companies, but it is not that easy. Most of the time, the platforms, even sometimes you have to wait like 1 year to be a member of that platform, just because they also make sure threat intelligence companies or the law enforcement agencies are not trying to sneak in to their platform. And most platforms have strict rules, strict regulations. So, and there are like hundreds platforms and the hacker forums on the dark web, like nobody, no organization actually has the time to go all through this platforms and the channels to monitor their third parties. So with this intelligence, actually all the data is comes front of you, and you can as a provide to yourself as a report and present it to your upper management. And again, this gives you a broader approach to your third parties. If there's any vulnerability of and the risk with your third parties, you can easily take necessary actions. So this is all from my side. I can see there are a couple of questions on the
Yes.
Q&A.
Mm-hmm.
So Furia asks, so does it mean it is based on third-party vulnerability? It also includes the Furia, the third-party vulnerability as well, just because if you remember, we mentioned with the Kesea, MSPs were also exploit like this is, if you're using MSP, then you're going to be hacked by the not third party, but the fourth party. Of course, this is also gives you an idea about the fourth parties as well. So Kalum asks, do you keep a list of all dark web platforms forms you provided CZA just for assessing coverage and any gaps? So we don't give all the lists, Kalum, but we provide sources. If your data is leaked, then you're gonna see the source. Like where did we get this information? And if it is a Telegram channel or Discord channel or the dark web, whatever it is, you are going to see the source. I guess this is all from the questions from the audience. So
I
thank you so much for everyone to joining me today. Thank you so much, Shaima, for being the moderator.
those for you. We really appreciate having you on this webinar, especially giving us this valuable information where we can actually help us to be more careful, and we need to be extra careful these days. Thank you all for joining us. Anything else, and Sarah, you would like to mention to us?
Hope to see you in the next webinars and trainings. Stay
Thank
safe.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, see you soon all. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.